Peace be with you. In Islam, there's a lot of talk about Prophet Muhammad and his companions, and usually this is along the lines of how great they were and all the great things they have achieved. And this is fine, this is accurate. But I wanted to talk a little bit about what the Quran says about their struggle. So I wanted to share some information about the Prophet Muhammad and his companions and how much they actually struggled and what the Quran says they did, and also kind of try to reveal their humanity that is recorded in the Quran. So, to answer, what is true about these legends about them and what isn't, we really have to look at the primary source, which is the Quran. So, what did Prophet Muhammad actually tell people he was like, or what did he say that his mission was? What kind of trials did he suffer? What kind of emotions did he feel? What were the companions like? What kind of emotions did they feel? Was their road easy? Did things come easy for them? So, before I say this, there will be some negative things said about Prophet Muhammad and his companions because they weren't perfect. And this is from the Quran. I'm not saying this. The Quran is saying this. I'm only highlighting these aspects because all the good things that are said about them are well known, but a lot of people don't pay attention to these aspects of their persona, which is actually, in my opinion, very important to pay attention to because it says something about them and us and what we should expect. So, uh, because the Quran says negative things about them, it makes it even more true because a man who does not hide his faults tells the truth. And given that the Quran exposes some of the faults of the Prophet and the companions, and does so for teaching purposes, further tells us that this is the truth. So I'm going to start with the companions, and the following few verses talk about their shortcomings, which is human shortcomings common to all generations. So we all have similar fears, desires, and struggles. And the point is that we're going to get tested on all of this, just like they got tested on it. So we want to know what kind of happened. So the first part I want to talk about is in verse 33, chapter 9 through 12. And it says, O you who believe, call to mind the favor of God when there came down upon you forces. So we sent against them a strong wind and forces that you did not see, and God is seeing what you do. When they came upon you from above you and from below you, and when the eyes turned dull, and the hearts rose up to the throats, and you began to think diverse thoughts about God. There the believers were tried, and they were shaken with severe shaking, and the hypocrites and those in whose hearts was a disease began to say, God and his messenger did not promise us, but only to deceive. And these nurses are well known. They're in regards to a battle. I think this was. It doesn't even matter what battle it was, but I think it was the siege of Medina. But it doesn't matter. What matters is the lessons here about what the companions experienced. So these verses are talking about them experiencing fear. We clearly see that they're afraid. Talking about the eyes turned dull and the hearts rising to up to the throats, and they're starting to think diverse thoughts about God, right? So they felt fear like we fear fear. They were humans with the same emotions we have. This fear made them actually question everything. They says, and you began to think diverse thoughts about God. So they started thinking Prophet Muhammad to be a liar and God to be a liar, right? They said God and his messengers did not promise us but to deceive. So some of these people in whose hearts is a disease started thinking about these things. Although right before they thought they were going to be overrun, they believed in God and Prophet Muhammad as his messenger. So, and this isn't really the only time fear is used as a test in the Quran. God actually promises us in the Quran and in chapter 2, verse 255, that we will be tested with fear and hunger and loss of lives and property and fruits. And it says, give news to the patient. Those who in hardship afflicts them say, to God we belong and to God we will certainly return. But we need to understand how strong these emotions are because the companions of the Prophet experienced them and they reacted to them. Right? They reacted to them. They began to think diverse thoughts about God and all those things. Everything that we are likely to encounter. It's easy to be faithful when everything is going good. Although most people call themselves Muslims aren't even faithful. Then imagine when you're afraid or hungry or something like this, experiencing something as they experience. You're about to be overrun and killed. And now all of a sudden, it caused some of them to question God and truth. Thinking about God is a liar, you know. So they were tested, and some of them failed. So before this, and a lot of people say, well, yeah, these are hypocrites and people in whose heart is a disease. But before that, they thought they were believers and they were followers of Prophet Muhammad. They were his companions. So any of us can be those people in whose hearts there is a disease and turn out to be hypocrites. We just don't know because we haven't been tested severely yet. And those of us who are failing, just not praying and not doing the simple things and fornicating and dealing with interest, we already failed. We don't even have to be tested with fear like they did. So we already failed. But this shows their humanity and how they reacted to fear, that even they weren't immune to fear. So knowing that, it just gives us a lesson of how really prepared we need to be, because how difficult this test was, that even companions of the Prophet suffered through it, and some of them failed while others succeeded. And then another example of their humanity is in the following verses, and this is in chapter 3, verses 152 to 155. And it says, and certainly God made good to you his promise when you killed him by his permission, until you became weak-hearted and disputed about the affair and disobeyed after he has shown you that which you loved. Among you were some who desire this world, and of you were some who desire the hereafter. Then he turned you away from them, that he may try you. And he has certainly forgiven you, and God is gracious to the believers. When you ran off precipitously and did not wait for anyone, and the messenger was calling you from your rear, so he gave you another sorrow instead of sorrow, so that you may not grieve at what has escaped you, nor at what befell you. And God is aware of what you do. Then after sorrow he sent down security upon you, a calm coming down upon a party of you, another party whom their own souls had rendered anxious. They entertain about God thoughts of ignorance, quite unjustly, saying, we have no hand in the affair. Surely the affair is wholly God's. They conceal within their souls what they would not reveal to you. They say, had we any hand in the affair, we would not have been killed here. Say, so now he's answering them, had you remained in your houses, those for whom slaughter was ordained would certainly have gone forth to the places where they would be killed, and that God might test what is in your hearts, and that he might purge what was in your hearts, and God knows what is in your hearts. Those of you who turned back on the day when the two armies met, only the devil sought to cause them to slip on account of some of the deeds they had done, and certainly God has forgiven them. Surely God is forgiving and forbearing. So these verses are again talking about companions who were tested in a time of war, and everything was going good. So it says, God made good to you his promise when you killed them by his permission, until you became weak-hearted. So everything was going good until they started to argue and disobey. So it says, you became weak-hearted and disputed about the affair and disobeyed after he had shown you that which you loved, right? So this actually is similar to the story of Talmud and David and Goliath in chapter 2, verse 249, when he leads the army, and he says, God will test us with this water, and whoever drinks of it, he won't be with me. So people are following a prophet. He tells them to do something, and then they dispute with him and do what he forbade. So this is what happened. These people were the companions of the prophet, actually disobeyed him. And it says why. It says, among you, God showed them that which they loved, right? So they got tested with desire. Companions of the prophet got tested with desire, and before they got tested of it, they were all companions of the prophet, and after they got tested by it, some of them failed, right? So God says, some of you desired this world, while others actually desire the hereafter, and we are supposed to be those who desire the hereafter. But then God says he certainly forgave you, and God is merciful to the believers. So also this was, God says that God might test what is in your hearts, and that he might purge what's in your heart, and God knows what's in the heart. So God already knows if we have this disease in our hearts and what we need to experience to get rid of this disease. And the companions of the prophet had this disease. Some of them had this disease in their heart, even though they were committed to the cause enough to where they're actually going to war, but they had this disease in their hearts, some of them, and God tells them that he forgave them. So this isn't the people that actually completely failed. because God, doesn't say, these people are cursed forever. They're done. They stay with the prophet, and the prophet tells them that, God forgave you. So these are companions, but they failed in this instance. So the point is, they struggled. They struggled just like we struggle. So, there's a story after story of these people struggling. They fail to desire, they fail to fear, but they continue. Some of them fall off completely, while others, ask for repentance, and then they continue to try to improve themselves. And then, the well-known stories about them we already know, and how they eventually succeed. But point of the story is, they're humans. They succumb to desire, they succumb to fear, all those things. And I'll just use one more example about them, just to kind of drive this point home. And this is in chapter 8, verses 5 to 8. And it says, "Even as your Lord caused you to go forth from your house with the truth, though a party of the believers were surely averse." So there became refugees. "They disputed with you about the truth after it had become clear, as if they were being driven to death while they saw it. And when God promised you one of the two parties that it shall be yours, and you loved that the one not armed should be yours, and God desired to make clear the truth of what was true by his words, and to cut off the root of the unbelievers, that he may show the truth of what is true, and show the falsehood of what was false, though the guilty disliked it." So again, the companions are being described as arguing with the prophet, right? So they didn't just blindly follow him. There were people among them who actually argued with him. They wanted the easy route. They wanted... So these are the people, just to kind of put this into context, these are the people who were kicked out of their homes for no good reason other than saying our Lord is God. So God gave them permission to fight and defend themselves. And this is in chapter 22, verse 40. Now that they're in this position to ambush an enemy, they want to attack a party of them that's not armed, a caravan that's not armed. So this is a simple human desire, right? They want the easy, these people took everything they had, and now they want to get some of it back, but they want to do it easy. Simple human desire. We all want that, right? But except God, that's not what God wanted, and they were tried by that. So now they argued with the Prophet Muhammad about it, and again, there's that human side to them where they want to avoid, mortal danger and things of that nature, which is just normal. All of us want to avoid that, and they wanted to avoid it. They were just humans. That makes it so much more important to understand that they were just humans, because then that shows us what's achievable, because they were just like us. So that's what every Muslim has to keep in mind. Every person that considers themselves a Muslim has to keep this in mind. Yeah, these were great people, but not because they were given more or had no emotions, or they were like blind and fearless people. No, they were just people. They were special because they eventually passed the test. They struggled, but they learned and had faith. They didn't do anything not achievable for the rest of humanity. They just worked through their fears and desires to achieve obedience to God. And they did what is actually expected. These examples just show us that it wasn't easy for them either, just like it isn't easy for us. So these were people with same flaws like we have, and same desires like we have. And, Prophet Muhammad came to them, he warned them about things that we are warned about, like drugs and intoxicants and, gambling and fornication, and killing their children. They were less perfect than we were when he came there, and then struggled to change. And this is the journey of Islam. You struggle to change. It's called a jihad, and you have to become a better person. And these people struggled. You can see that they struggled. They were not perfect. They didn't just wake up one day and were perfect. They struggled. They really struggled. And so that's about them, the companions of Prophet Muhammad. What about Prophet Muhammad himself? And unfortunately, this will be a long video, but I want to do it together like this because this is important, because he wasn't perfect either. So was his journey easy? What did he say to people he was? Was he did he claim he was an angel? Did he claim he was powerful, a magician? Did he claim he was perfect? No. All he ever told these people, that he was just a man, right? He said, and there's several verses about this. So in chapter 7 of verse 188, he tells them, and all of these verses that I will quote start with the command kul, which means say in Arabic. So God commands Prophet Muhammad that he has to say this. And he says, "I do not control any benefit or harm for my own soul except as God pleases. And had I known the unseen, I would have had much good, and no evil would have touched me. I am nothing but a warner and a giver of good news for those who believe. So he says, I don't control anything. Only what God wants done with me will happen, and I don't even know the unseen. If I knew it, I would be well off, and I wouldn't be going through this hardship, right? I only follow, I'm here to warn you, warn the wicked, and give good news to the good. That's it. Then in chapter 10, verse 49, again, kul, say, I do not control for myself any harm or any benefit except what God pleases. Every nation has a term. When their term comes, they shall not remain behind an hour, nor can they go before. So again, he tells them, I don't control anything. Everything is in God's control. So he's not giving people any false promises. In chapter 18, verse 110, he says, I am only a mortal like you. It is revealed to me that your God is one God. Therefore, whoever hopes to meet his Lord, he should do good deeds, and do not join anyone in service of his Lord. So that's all he tells them. I'm just a mortal like you guys. That's it. I'm just a human being, and whoever hopes to meet God should do good deeds. Then he says in chapter 46, verse 9, again, kul, I am not the first of the messengers, and I don't know what will be done with me or with you. I don't follow anything but that which has been revealed to me, which is what God gave him, which is the Quran. And I am nothing but a plain warner. I'm just here to warn. And then the last one I'm going to quote is, again, kul, say, surely no one can protect me against God, nor can I find besides him any place of refuge, only a delivering from God and his messages. And whoever disobeys God and his messenger, surely he will have the fire of hell to stay therein for a long time. So his actual message to people was that he was just a man, that people have to do good, that he controls nothing, that everything is in God's control, and that he is not the first of the messengers. He doesn't know what's going to happen. So God instructed him to say this. Every single one of these verses starts with a command, kul, or say. So he said this to people, and this is what you have to imagine, him actually saying these words, because he did say these words because they are in the Quran. So any fantasy or legends that may be about him and what he said that contradicts this is false. He never claimed to be special. He just claimed to be just a man who came to give a warning and good news to people. And he says he does not know the unseen. He doesn't know what's going to happen. Nothing like that. So, and then I wanted to kind of add a little bit about his personality. Just like his companions, he struggled as well. He made mistakes. So in the first example, I'm just going to list a few examples of the mistakes he made just to show his humanity, that he wasn't perfect. And God, corrects him. And then he changes, and every time God corrects him, he changes and he adjusts his behavior. But there's this human struggle to obey God and fight desires and fight emotions, which is what we all have to do. And he had to do it too. He wasn't special. He wasn't given some magical power to where he wasn't special, to where he was that special that it wasn't a struggle for him. So in the first example, he is reprimanded by God for pardoning people too quickly. And this is in chapter 9, verses 33 and 34. Had it been a near advantage and a short journey, they would have certainly followed you. But the tedious journey was too long for them, and they swear by God, if we had been able, we would certainly have gone forth with you. They caused their own souls to perish, and God knows they are liars. And then God says, God forgive you. Why did you give them leave until those who spoke the truth had become clear to you, and you known the liars? So he misjudges the character of people, and then God informs him, you did this wrong. So he made a mistake. And then in the next example, this is an important example because it shows that even Prophet Muhammad was at risk of peer pressure and what we will call cancel culture in our day. And this is in chapter 17, verses 73 to 75. And it says, and surely they had purposed to turn you away from that which have revealed to you, that you should forge against us other than that. And then they would certainly have taken you for a friend. And had it not been that we had already established you, you would certainly have been near to incline to them a little. In that case, we would have certainly made you taste the double punishment in this life and double in after death. And then you would have not found against us any helper against us. So it says their plan, the plan of the people around him, is that they wanted him to lie about something, make something up, and then they would be his friend. But then the important part says, and if it wasn't that God helped them, he would have been inclined to do that. He wanted friends. It's not like he was immune to everything, right? And as I will show a little bit in another verse, he felt grief, and people called him crazy, and he didn't want that. Nobody wants that. Think about the whole world calling you crazy. Your whole world calling you crazy, and that's a difficult life to live. So, had God not helped him, he was inclined toward that, to actually make friends and have people stop abusing him that much. Um, there's several examples, but I'm going to skip some of them. So if you wanna read about them, actually I can't skip this one. It's in chapter 33, verse 37, and this kind of builds on what I just said. It says, "And when you said to him who God had shown favor, and to whom you had shown favor, keep your wife to yourself and be careful of your duty to God. And you hid in your soul what God would bring to light." And this is talking about Prophet Muhammad now. God is telling him, you hid in your soul what God wanted shown. And you feared people, and God had a greater right that you should fear him. And this again is talking about peer pressure. "But when Zayd had accomplished his want of her, we gave her to you as a wife, so that there should be no difficulty for the believers in respect of the wives of their adopted sons, when they have accomplished their want of them, and God's command shall be performed." So this is talking about who you can marry, right? And their culture is that you can't marry your adopted son is like your real son, which is not. He took this boy in, or man in. Obviously, he's married, but now this man wants to get divorced, and Prophet Muhammad was like, "No, don't get divorced. Don't get divorced." Uh, and he hid in his soul what God wanted to bring to light. So this woman was given to him in marriage, and he sounds like he didn't really want to do that, but he did it. And the most important line here is that Prophet Muhammad feared people, and God had a greater right that he should fear him. So he didn't want to do this because he didn't want to be ostracized. He didn't want people to turn against him. He is trying to call people to the right path, and all of a sudden he's commanded to do something that will turn everybody against him. And God says, "I don't care. You're going to do what I say, and that's all." But there, it shows another quality. Prophet Muhammad felt fear. He felt fear he felt social pressure. He felt the pressure of cancel culture, and it actually caused him to almost fail himself. And then there's another verse in chapter 66, verse 1. It says, "O prophet, why do you forbid that which God has made lawful for you? You seek to please your wives, and God is forgiving, merciful." So in that case, again, he's making a mistake. He's trying to please his wives, and whoever is married, you want to, that old saying, "Happy wife, happy life," is definitely true for men. But you see here that God reprimands him for it. What God made lawful, he doesn't care who doesn't like it, is going to happen, and you're going to say it. So he turns around and then does the right thing. But again, you see that pressure on him. Another mistake he made is in chapter 80, verses 1 through 11. It says, "He frowned and turned his back because there came to him a blind man." Right? So Prophet Muhammad is annoyed. And what will make you know that he would purify himself, or become reminded, so the reminder should profit him? "As for him who considers himself free from need, to him do you address yourself, and no blame is on you if he would not purify himself. And as for him who comes to you striving hard, and he fears, for him will you turn away? No, surely it is a warning." So here, basically, he is addressing himself. He's applying himself toward people who are rich, and ignoring a person who is probably useless to the cause, even though he is eager to believe in God and all that. So again, God reprimands him for that. I'll quote one more verse because it's talking about the end of days. What he answered people when they asked him about end of days. They ask you about the hour. When will be its taking place? Say, the knowledge of it is only with my Lord. None but he shall manifest it in its time. It will be momentous in the heavens and the earth, and it will not come on you but of a sudden. They ask you as if you were solicitous about it. Say, its knowledge is only with God, but most people do not know. Say, I do not control any benefit or any harm for my own soul except as God pleases. So then he repeats, what I already said earlier. But basically he answers, Only God knows when that will happen, and I don't know that. So there's other verses in the Quran that basically talk about how he feels grief. It's there's another verse, and I forget the reference. It says, "And we know that which they say grieves you, but they do not call you a liar, but the unjust deny the communications of God." So I forget the reference, but that is talking about Prophet Muhammad feeling grief, right? His community is calling him crazy. This is not easy. So he is fighting through the same human emotions, the same human struggles as his companions. The Quran actually gives an account of their journey. It doesn't just give how great they are. It gives an account of how they actually get there. And this is the whole point of this long video. I wish I could make it shorter. But this is the account of their journey. These people, they struggle. They fight. They feel social pressure. They feel fear. They feel hunger. They make mistakes. They go through all this process of growth. They undergo this, what's called in Arabic, jihad, which is simply a word for struggle. And they grow through it, and eventually they become believers. And this is what is expected of every Muslim, every person, of not just Muslim, of every person. This is a similar concept of growth as in Christianity as well. You have to get better. And this just shows that it's not easy for anybody. So if you are struggling, like I'm struggling, like everybody's struggling, it's normal. That is normal. Now, if you're struggling on small things, then you're already in trouble, right? These people failed on fear. They made mistakes on fear, and some made mistakes on desire, and some made mistakes on social pressure and being ostracized, which is also fear. But if we are just making mistakes on basics like morality, then we're already lost, and we'll probably never get tested. We may be grateful to God that we never got tested, but we already failed because we failed in the first grade. We don't need to be tested any further. This is who they were. Prophet Muhammad was a messenger of God, and people with him were sincere. He came to give good news and a warning, and these people followed it. He or they never claimed to be special. They lived ordinary human lives, and they achieved extraordinary feats simply because they were sincere to God. That is their claim to fame. That is their claim to success. They all felt all the temptation that we feel. They had all the vices that we have. They actually had it much harder than we have it. And now it's our turn to see how we'll do. So there's a verse in the Quran that talks about this. It's not directly in reference to Prophet Muhammad and his companions, but people who came before them, but it applies in this case as well. And this is in chapter 2, verse 134. This is a people that have passed away. They shall have what they earned, and you will have what you earned. You will not be called upon to answer for what they did. So now it's our turn. Now we are alive, and we are expected to grow and become submitters to God, which is what Muslim means in Arabic. And if we fail, then Prophet Muhammad said, "I am not a keeper over you." There's a verse that says. In chapter 13, verse 40, it says, "And we will either let you see a part of what we threatened them with or cause you to die. For only the delivery of the message is on you, while calling to account is ours." So Prophet Muhammad didn't come to save us. He came to warn us. And then he demonstrated the struggle that is what we should all expect. The tests and the fears and the struggles and the failures and getting through that, because nobody is just perfect. You don't just wake up one day and say, "I'm perfect." You have to struggle and practice. You did not learn how to read and write easy. You did not learn how to play sports easy. You did not learn anything in this life easy. And faith being the hardest thing in this world to achieve is probably going to be the hardest one. So all of that is through trial and error. All of it is through study. You have to put in work. You have to put in effort. So that's it. That's all I want to say.